shirkan jaraa'id oo lagu qabtay xafiiska xeer ereyaha guud ee gobolka Minnesota oo isla qabteen Andy Lugar oo ah xeer ereyaha guud iyo waliba sidoo kale mas'uulka ugu sareeyo FBI-da magaalada Minneapolis Richard ayaa waxa lagu sheegay in 6 wiil oo Soomaali ah lagu soo qabtay magaaladan kadib baaritaan dheer oo lagu suubiyay ugu horeyntiina waxa hadlay Andy Lugarna waxa uu cadeeyay in shalay la soo xiray dhalinyaradan oo 6 kala ahna محمد عبد الحميد فارح آذن عبد الحميد فارح عبد الرحمن ياسين داود زكريا يوسف عبد الرحمن هند مصطفى موسى يوليبا قوليد علي عمر.
Each of those charged in the criminal complaint participated in a criminal conspiracy over the last 10 months. Our offices have dedicated enormous resources during the past year to investigating a large group of friends and relatives who have been meeting with one simple goal in mind. As the complaint makes clear, this group is committed to joining ISIL by any means possible. The men charged today are part of that group. They have spent a great deal of time over the past year trying to get to Syria to fight for ISIL. They have tried to leave the United States from our airport here in Minnesota, from JFK Airport in New York, by bus, by car, and by any means possible. As described in the complaint, some members of their group have succeeded, but many have been stopped by law enforcement and have been unable to travel to Syria. The defendants are friends. They met regularly to plan their secretive trips to Syria through a variety of means. These 6 defendants are part of a broader group that includes Minnesotans, some of whom are already familiar to all of you. Hamza Ahmed, who was indicted by a federal grand jury in February, was part of this group. He, along with Mohammed Farah, Mousseh, and Abdurrahman, tried to get to Syria by taking a Greyhound bus to JFK Airport last November. After being stopped, and despite Ahmed's indictment, these 3 defendants continued to try to get to Syria to join ISIL. Abdullahi Yusuf, who has already pled guilty to conspiring to join ISIL, was also a part of the group, as was his friend Abdi Noor. Yusuf was stopped last May from traveling to join ISIL from the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. Noor, unfortunately, made it to Syria, where today he is an active recruiter for ISIL. Based on the information in the complaint, these defendants, along with Ahmed, Yusuf, Noor, recruited each other, supported each other's efforts to get to Syria, helped each other with funding, and worked exclusively and extensively to come up with the best travel arrangements. On multiple occasions, members of the group were stopped from traveling to Syria. Their plans were disrupted, and the consequences of their actions were made clear to them. Yet they continued. Guled, for example, was stopped multiple times from traveling. But what is remarkable about this case is that nothing stopped these defendants from pursuing their goal. They never stopped plotting another way to get to Syria to join ISIL. They were not confused young men. They were not easily influenced. These are focused men who are intent on joining a terrorist organization by any means possible. People often ask who is doing the terror recruiting in Minnesota and when will we catch the person responsible. But it is not that simple. But they did have extra help. They had their friend Abdi Noor. Because he made it to Syria last year and knows different routes and has different contacts, Noor has become a de facto foreign fighter recruiter for those in Minnesota. As explained in the complaint, he is in regular contact with his friends, he advises them, and he serves as a source of inspiration for those who want to replicate his success. To be clear, we have a terror recruiting problem in Minnesota. And this case demonstrates how difficult it is to put an end to recruiting here. Parents and loved ones should know that there is not one master recruiter organizing in the Somali community locally. What this case shows is that the person radicalizing your son, your brother, your friend may not be a stranger. It may be their best friend right here in town. And your brother, your son, your relative could be talking to Abdi Noor in Syria, who is providing inspiration and ideas for how to get to Syria. I applaud the parents and relatives who are trying to keep young men safe from this activity. But as this case demonstrates, it is difficult to do it on your own. I urge anyone who is concerned about their young son or brother to seek help in the community. Reach out to a trusted friend, a teacher, a professional counselor, or religious leader. Ultimately, unless we stop it from happening, the planning and scheming that takes place among those committed to joining ISIL and to participating in ISIL's violent ideology leads either to fighting for terrorists in Syria or to arrest here in Minnesota. The information we now have about peer-to-peer recruiting and the lengths that these conspirators would go in order to join ISIL was made clearer in recent months. One member of the conspiracy decided to change course. One friend in this group decided to leave and to cooperate with the FBI. That cooperating witness agreed to record meetings of the co-conspirators, and some of the information gathered through these conversations is set forth in the complaint. The cooperating witness provides an inside view into the thinking of the conspirators and the depth of their commitment to join ISIL. These recordings also capture the critical role played by Abdi Noor in helping the conspirators with their efforts. Frustrated by their inability to travel from Minnesota, from New York, and elsewhere, the conspirators discussed obtaining false passports and flying to Syria through Mexico. In the past few weeks, several of these defendants provided cash and photos of themselves to the cooperating witness to get fake passports so they could leave the United States. I have said many times that we need to break the cycle of terror recruiting in Minnesota. These arrests bring us one step closer. Because these 6 men, and Yusuf and Ahmed before them, were prevented from going, they will not be the next wave of recruiters like Abdi Noor. They cannot reach out to more friends and relatives to join their cause. Each person we stop from traveling to Syria is one less Minnesota recruiter for ISIL. But Noor and others are not done. There are more friends who will be subjected to peer-to-peer recruiting, and more who will be contacted by Abdi Noor and others overseas. I want to applaud the outstanding and hard work of the dedicated FBI special agents, analysts, and task force officers who have spent countless hours investigating the members of this conspiracy. They are among the best in the country, and Minnesota is fortunate to have these agents and officers right here keeping us all safe. I also want to recognize the prosecutors in my office and at the National Security Division at the Department of Justice for their excellent work. Despite the hard work and great successes of so many, law enforcement cannot do this alone. Everyone I talk with in the Somali community in Minnesota wants this terror recruiting to end. I am proud to be a part of the effort that so many Somali Minnesotans are making to end terror recruiting in our state. And here is my pledge. I will work with and help anyone who in good faith wants to break the cycle of terror recruiting in Minnesota. As I said, we have a terror recruiting problem in Minnesota. The problem will not go away unless we address it head on. It's not a Somali problem. It's not an immigrant problem. It is our problem, a Minnesota problem. For the safety of our community and all of our children, we must join with the courageous Somali leaders who are working to bring this terror recruiting to an end. We have a long way to go. But working together, I believe we can break the cycle of recruiting and end this practice in the state of Minnesota.
sidoo kalena madasha waxaa ka hadlay Richard oo ah mas-uulka ugu sarreeya FBI-da magaalada Minneapolis waxa uuna sheegay in markii hore walwalka Soomaalida ama dhalinyarada Soomaaliyeed ka haysto nabad ilaaliyayaasha ama nabad sugidda ay ahaayeen inay ku biirayaan al-shabaab iyo ururada noocaasa, balse hadda walwalka ugu weyn oo haysta ay tahay in ay iminka ku biirayaan ururka ISIL oo ka dagaalama Syria iyo Iraq. Waana kan.
Good morning. My name is Rick Thornton, and I'm the Special Agent in charge of the FBI for Minnesota. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force has been confronting the problem of individuals from Minnesota who traveled overseas to join foreign terrorist organizations since 2007. Originally, these Minnesotans traveled to join al-Shabaab in Somalia. More recently, we've witnessed the travel and attempted travel of Minnesota men and women to join ISIL in Syria. Terrorism investigations are often extremely complex, time-consuming, and labor-intensive. A key aspect of our strategy in these investigations is to bring the knowledge, expertise, and experience of the entire law enforcement and intelligence communities to bear. I would like to recognize some of our important state and local Joint Terrorism Task Force partners: the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Bloomington, and University of Minnesota Police Departments, the Hennepin County and Ramsey County Sheriff's Departments, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, as well as our federal partners, the United States Marshals Service, Customs and Border Protection, Homeland Security Investigations, Department of Defense, Department of State, and the Federal Air Marshal Service. These partnerships are crucial to the success of these investigations and in helping to keep Minnesota and this nation safe. Yesterday, the FBI arrested 6 Somali American men from Minnesota who were conspiring to take steps to leave the United States and travel to Syria to fight on behalf of ISIL. 2 of these men were arrested by the FBI's San Diego office after driving from Minnesota to San Diego to obtain fraudulent travel documents. These men then planned to cross into Mexico and travel to Syria. 4 additional men were arrested in the Twin Cities for conspiring to or providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization. This alleged criminal activity by these 6 Minnesota men is emblematic of the challenges faced by law enforcement and the nation. Citizens and or residents of the United States who become radicalized and then choose to travel overseas and become a terrorist and join a terrorist organization. I want to be very clear about our intentions. The FBI will aggressively investigate and seek federal prosecution of those who travel or take steps to travel overseas to join a terrorist organization. This is a responsibility we take very seriously. It is equally important for the FBI and our law enforcement partners in Minnesota to continue to work closely with those members of our local Somali community who want to end this cycle of Minnesotans traveling to fight and most likely die overseas. The FBI will not stand idly by and permit these efforts to go unchallenged. I would like to commend the numerous concerned members of the community who assist the FBI on a daily basis, and especially those members of the Somali community here in Minnesota who helped stop these 6 men from traveling to Syria. These courageous men and women decided to do something to prevent more Minnesotans from traveling and dying in support of a terrorist organization which is evil to its core. It is important to know that some of the information which led to this operation came to the FBI from a young man who for many months was planning to travel to ISIL with the others. This young man had a change of conscience and contacted the FBI regarding what was being planned. Finally, I know from extensive personal interaction with religious, civic, and youth leaders within our Somali community that they are greatly troubled by these recruitment efforts and they want this to stop. Law enforcement in the Somali community in Minnesota have a shared responsibility to do everything we can to prevent the terrorist recruitment of any more members of our community.
Okay, we'll take a couple of questions.
Sir,
Let me get some hands first. Okay, yes?
is there any indication Noor before, or did he reach out to them, or is there?
There's evidence in the complaint. Nor early on. It's set forth in the complaint, yes.
How is he reaching out to them on his own, or is there some other?
In the complaint, it's detailed that he's reaching out to them, they're reaching back to him. Tom?
You mentioned peer-to-peer recruiting. Do you believe there is something beyond peer-to-peer recruiting? In other words, do you believe there are also individuals in Minnesota who have some level above the peer level? We've talked a lot about, well, the public has talked a lot about Amir Mishal. It's been in the media, his role and his connection to Al Farouk. And do these others also have a connection to that particular mosque?
So welcome back, Tom.
Thank you.
Good to hear the same question asked another time.
I never give up.
And you shouldn't. There's nothing in the complaint that talks about Mashal. The only mention of Al Farouk in the complaint is early on with respect to Mr. Yusuf. So I'm going to leave it there. But keep asking. Yes.
Yeah, it's the same question. One of the defendants mentioned that the tickets just show up. So what does that mean? Is anyone providing tickets for this young man?
It's under investigation.
But going back to
Laura.
Sorry.
That's right.
Going back to Tom's question, can you answer just more generally, is there anything above a peer-to-peer radicalization model at play?
This conspiracy and this organization appears, by what we know, particularly from the person who chose to cooperate, to be a peer-to-peer operation. As I said, they had help from Noor, who's overseas, guiding them and giving them ideas. But as you see in the complaint, how to fund this operation was done internally for the most part. There was talk about Dawood selling his car. There's talk about Guled emptying his financial aid account to pay for his travel. So the complaint itself talks about this being primarily an internal peer-to-peer operation. Take one or two more. Esme?
Yeah, what made you pull the trigger now? And also, you're talking about a terror recruiting problem here in Minnesota. There's been the mall here. Are you concerned that any of these people who are involved in recruiting here are going to strike here?
There's no credible evidence in our possession that any of the people we're looking at threatens to do anything in Minnesota. Their overriding principle is to get to Syria and join Noor and others to fight there. As to why we pulled the trigger now, it's an operational decision. It's one that we make together as when we believe the case is ready to go.
And how much of a breakthrough is it to have recordings of these individuals? I don't recall hearing anything like that.
It is a big deal, and here's why. When you have somebody who is part of the conspiracy tape recording what they have, not tape recording, recording what they have to say, you get a real inside view into the thinking. And one of the things that you can get when you have a recording, in this case, in a gang case, in a drug case, in any case, is whether there are people in the conspiracy who are hesitant, who don't want to be a part of it, who maybe speak out against it, who challenge what the others are saying. If that happens, you can make a decision about charging. Didn't happen here. These men were intent on going to Syria to fight for an organization that they knew committed violent acts on a daily basis. One more. Yes?
Your meeting covers this, but is there a larger financial network at work here? Is there financial support coming from somewhere else?
There is no evidence of that in this investigation. The investigation continues. I made a mistake. Jay, one more.
Any closer to getting Noir or taking him out?
Abdi Noor is in Syria.
So is the government trying to get him or take him out?
No comment, Jay.
Can I talk about one more
I-
question
no.
about the entrapment possibility with this informant? Just because people will raise that question about whether he went far in terms of actually, after he was already your informant, helping to get passports and things. People will ask about entrapment.
What you will see in the complaint are pages upon pages of this investigation back to spring of last year, long before this participant decided to change course. The attempt to travel out of this airport, the attempt to travel out of JFK Airport. These men have been intent on traveling to Syria for almost 1 year. Recently, one of their members came forward. That's not an issue. We're going to call it there.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Everyone, thank you. If you have any follow-up off camera after, I'm happy to help you.
محمود ذو اليدين صومالي تي في مينيابوليس من الثورة